Ahead of Ubisoft Forward, I recently got the opportunity to play roughly 3 hours in a build of Assassin's Creed Valhalla remotely from home. So I thought I'd make a video giving my thoughts on the game based on the 3 hours of gameplay that I experienced, so that you guys have a rough idea as to where I'm at thoughts wise. I'll also likely be depositing short videos of gameplay in a less heavily edited form as well, so you guys can likely see better how the game plays than you will in a video of me giving my thoughts with more heavy editing. Not that it's heavy editing at all, it's just cuts. But please bear in mind that through all that, this game isn't out yet, and this gameplay is still a work in progress and must be treated with dignity accordingly. First thing you'll notice is this game has lovely visuals, and there is a lot of atmosphere in that alone. An improvement I noticed on this front is the facial animations have significantly improved from Odyssey. There is, however, still some inconsistency in the quality of faces and their animations, and some faces are genuinely a little bit hard on the eyes, but I've seen much worse, so I don't really want to complain about that. On top of that, the lighting is strong and atmospheric, and certainly adds to the environment. There's not really that much to say on the good visuals front. I feel like the visuals are just good, and that's sort of how it is. There is certainly a bit of jank that needs ironing out, but then again, the game is a work in progress, so I don't know what you'd expect. Onto the gameplay front, which is arguably the most important thing in a video game. The first thing you'll notice here are, of course, the similarities to Origins and Odyssey. Thankfully, I can say Valhalla takes a much more grounded approach, more comparable to Origins, but there are some mild Odyssey aspects in there, such as these combat abilities, which are incredibly useful, just like they would have been in Odyssey where it's combat balanced. And of course, we'll talk about Valhalla's combat shortly. I'm quite happy to report that Valhalla felt much more refined than Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey when it comes to the gameplay, the core mechanics, and the balancing at the very least, and in my opinion that's a hefty improvement that won't go amiss. I will however say that I don't think this game should be playing the same as Origins and Odyssey, as like it or not there's less identity in the gameplay. One of my biggest critiques for Assassin's Creed Odyssey was the dialogue was simply a mess. The dialogue options were handled with about as much care as you'd expect from a 4-year-old finger painting a lion. The reason why Odyssey's dialogue came across as so sloppy in my opinion is simply because instead of giving us several different responses that the protagonist would say in a situation like this based on their personality, we get several different bipolar emotions, and the end result was an inconsistent dialogue system. And while in 3 hours of playing the game I really didn't get much time to explore the dialogue in depth, but when dialogue options popped up, no matter what option I chose, I never felt like it didn't suit Eivor's character, which I'll be honest, I don't know much about, but I guess I mean in the sense of being built off the back of previous dialogue options. I also noticed that it's pretty cool that not every single dialogue encounter you have requires dialogue options to be used. This to me proves that Eivor will indeed have preset core character traits, which would be a massive improvement over Odyssey. There are a couple of moments where I had decisions to make in dialogue, and one where I got to witness the impact of that decision. After defeating a boss known as Ruud, I got the opportunity to either kill or spare him. Of course I spared him, however not too long later he came back and challenged King Oswald of East Anglia. At least I presume he's the king, I mean that's what they're saying. But anyway, it's besides the point. We then get the choice to fight him as Oswald's champion, or let Oswald fight him. I don't know what happens if you don't choose to fight as Oswald's champion, because I choose the option where Eivor volunteers to fight on Oswald's behalf. So then we fight Ruud again, and he dies. It's a bit hard to gauge the impact that your decisions actually make in this. On one side, if you choose to spare him, you open yourself up to this boss fight later, but if you look at it from the other angle, you wind up killing him anyway. However, I'd imagine the different decisions have different outcomes, and I guess to see the real weight and impact of your choices in this game, we'll have to wait and see when the game finally launches. I don't, however, feel like the game forced me to kill Ruud, even though it gave me 2 opportunities to do so, the latter of which I took. I do wonder how it would have played out differently if I'd not got involved in that second fight, or even killed him in the first encounter. On the voicing front, some parts feel natural and fluid, and other parts feel somewhat out of place. I just feel like the flow in dialogue sometimes breaks down. I think the best thing I can do is give you guys a bit of an example.
Is there any skill of mine that I could impress upon you?
Even a fool has something to teach, whether they are aware of the lesson or not.
Hey. But I could show you how to wield my plow sword.
Be plain about it, Stiffspear. You want to lay with me, is that it?
That I do. Will you follow me? To a place more comfortable?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, that could do some work. Moving on from dialogue, next up we have the combat to discuss. Even if lacking visual glory, the combat feels weighty and balanced. I find it was less about fighting damage sponges and more about thoughtful timing, strikes and dodging for example, with it requiring you to use your abilities thoughtfully. Heavy attacks and dodges cost stamina. Then of course you have the abilities you can use by building up your adrenaline meter, I believe that's what it is anyway, which delivers devastating attacks that do massive amounts of damage to any enemy. When using archery, the game highlights weak spots spots on your enemies. You can also sometimes stun your enemies and then be prompted to deliver a devastating attack. A lot of the time these function as finishers, but not necessarily always. I noticed these stun attacks were present in both melee and archery. When it came to the boss fights that I played in my 3-hour sitting, they felt challenging but well balanced. Even though they're bosses, your enemy doesn't have so much health that they feel like a damage sponge, and your attacks can do massive amounts of damage. But like I said, the combat focuses a lot more on timing and getting the measure of your opponent in general, and so if you're not careful, your enemy's attacks can do massive amounts of damage back. So it's in a position where the boss fights present a challenge without wasting half an hour of your day, which again is a massive improvement over whatever the hell Assassin's Creed Odyssey's boss fights were trying to do. In the 3 hours I played, there were a handful of boss fights that I could do, and they all required me to utilise different strategies, and that keeps the fights interesting and fun. So they aren't too easy, they're not too hard, they don't take up too much time really. And if the examples in the small area that I got to experience are anything to go by, there'll be plenty of fleshing out on these boss fights, and at the same time, there'll be plenty of them. Furthermore, I noticed you have to strategize differently for different enemy types. So you have to tackle fighting a wolf differently to how you tackle fighting a man. But then again, obviously that's the case in most games. When it comes to human enemies, you've got to strategize based on several factors: the weapon they're using, whether or not they've got a shield, maybe sometimes even their size, and in some instances their aggression, as berserkers for example are incredibly aggressive enemies. On top of this, you don't automatically recover your health, you have to use a health potion sort of feature, and it's important to pay attention to how much health you have, as it appears as if you can lose your health pretty quickly. On the kill animation front, this game appears to have more of them, that's for sure. I spent a lot of my sitting doing combat related stuff, and I have to say it was really fun. Obviously, people are going to ask me a lot about stuff such as social stealth, which is said to be in the game. However, I didn't get much opportunity to explore much of that. I did do a little bit of your bog standard stealth business, and of course, using the hidden blade again felt sweet. I did notice you have a tool wheel where you can whack your hood up, and the game mentioned that people will respond to you differently with it up. Navigational controls are pretty smooth. However, I noticed that you toggle sprinting once more, with the default movement being a nice pace to jog. I'd love to be able to toggle walking as well, and I'd imagine on keyboard and mouse on PC there will likely be a feature that allows you to do this, just as there was in Assassin's Creed Origins. The atmosphere of this world is pretty damn sweet. In what I played, the environment felt alive and functional, and the soundtrack that plays as you explore is truly glorious. It helps capture the feeling of the game and its setting, and good ambience music like present here always encourages me to explore, which is exactly what I did. In the small area that I got to experience, I don't think in 3 hours I managed to do all of it, because there was so much to see and do. Granted, a lot of that time was spent brutally murdering wolves, but there were loads of little secrets to find in this area. Some led to simple treasures, and others led to interesting encounters, like going to a village and playing hide and seek with a group of children. These things aren't necessarily side quests, they're simply world encounters. This adds depth to the world, and honestly, I love it. Of course, there are some characters you can come across and you can help them with certain tasks. Also returning are camps and forts, as previously seen in Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey. However, I noticed that they've gotten rid of the checklist at these locations, which is honestly something that I can really respect. I ran into a guy who challenged me to a duel, and I thought he was going to fight me, but as it turns out, it was a fighting encounter. Or at least that's what I presume it was. I kind of struggled as I was a bit confused as to what was going on, but I guess in the context of playing the full game on launch, that won't be an issue. While exploring the world, you may find letters and things that provide fleshing out and story to the locations that you can visit. There are simply so many activities that I got to experience in my 3 hours of playing this game. I think the best part is about the world is some of the things you can encounter are genuinely unpredictable.
Did you kill these men?
These defilers killed themselves by despoiling this sacred ground. God told me the full tale. Then he told me to chastise them. And he has told me much about you, too.
Stand down, Saxon. I mean you no harm.
When considering the context of the full game when the game finally launches, I do wonder how that unpredictability will hold up. The less you know what to expect from encounters and points of interest, the more likely you are to go and investigate. And that's something I really like about what I got to experience here. The controllable eagle mechanic in Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey carries over into Valhalla with a raven, though I noticed when in my 3 hours I didn't get any prompts to use the raven whatsoever. So instead of being an essential part of every single quest or piece of gameplay, now you just use it to find stuff. It would appear as if that's only when you deem necessary. However, I would imagine there are some points where it would find its use in certain quests as well, so I won't presume too much. However, it's good to see that this isn't being forced as much as it was in the past 2 games. And yes, Sunin does indeed do a barrel roll. In the smallish area that I got to explore, I did find quite a lot of viewpoints, all of which once you've synchronized you can fast travel to. On top of this is an Animus Pulse-like feature which I'd imagine, though I didn't really use it anywhere useful, it helps you scan environments for containers and things to loot and highlight nearby points of interest. When near water you can call your longship, aboard which you find your crew. The longship doesn't appear to be a very combat-based gameplay feature like the naval has been in previous Assassin's Creed installments. Instead, it simply appears to be a means to travel the waterways of the open world. It does appear appear as if your longship is used primarily in the open world, but in this raid part of a quest I was playing, it does not appear as if we are using Eivor's longship at all, but instead just a random longship. But I think the gameplay premise still stands, as sailing is mostly used for travelling, as even in this demo where I'm being fired upon, I don't have any weapons to fire back with. And honestly, naval was starting to get a bit tired on me anyway, so simply using the longship as another method of transport is sure to be a nice change of pace. I think it's fair to say on the climbing and parkour front, the game is mostly similar to Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey, using what appears to be the same climbing and parkour as those games. Again, this game has quite a lot of countryside, so I can't imagine on the whole that it's going to be something that you're going to use as frequently as you would have used in older Assassin's Creed games. It certainly wasn't frequently used in the 3 hours that I played. That being said, it wasn't underused either. At one point in the session I found myself in an old crypt, in which I had to use parkour elements to navigate, but I'd argue there's not much difference in the parkour in Valhalla that I experienced and the parkour in Assassin's Creed Origins. One minor thing I noticed that I thought was worth bringing up, because I think it's pretty cool, is the fact that your horse can swim. If you tried to swim with your horse in Assassin's Creed Origins, it would throw you off and it would feel very unnatural. It's good to see that fixed here. Another thing I noticed is if you kill a civilian, the game will start warning you like it used to. A simple feature that was removed in favour of a hollow bounty system in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where to clear it you just had to pay money to the world map. I think it's better that the game forces you to not kill civilians if it's not going to apply a logical system to punish you for doing so. It's just a bit more genuine, I guess. In the end of the day, who cares? It's only a really minor thing, but I did think it was worth mentioning just the same. Overall, from the 3 hours that I've played of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, there are some aspects that need a little bit of work, but I understand and appreciate what the game's going for, and I did enjoy playing it. The visuals are lovely, the soundtrack in the background as you explore is fantastic. Facial animations, though better than Odyssey, don't really sell me that much. Some jank dialogue could do with treating, and obviously there are a few bugs that need patching at this point that I won't talk about, because it's like criticising a building that's still being constructed for not having windows. Obviously I must stress that the build that I played is a work in progress, and therefore a lot of aspects are subject to change, but I can't deny that I had a good time. Of course I have to give thanks to Ubisoft for allowing me the privilege to experience this. And so those are my thoughts based on the tiny part of the game that I played. Of course I'll be releasing some more focused gameplay videos, so stay tuned for those, but thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends and all that wonderful stuff. That would be fantastic. And with any luck I'll catch you all very soon with some more Assassin's Creed Valhalla related content. But until then gamers, take it easy and goodbye.